Good evening. My name is Bob Liff, and this is the CUNY Forum, bringing together prominent New Yorkers with faculty and students of the Edward T. Rogowsky Internship Program in Government and Public Affairs. As much as we like to attribute the success and failures of our city to the talents and foibles of our mayor, very often it's the result of factors beyond his control. When David Dinkins became mayor, the economy was going into the dumpers, suffering the results of the 1987 recession. When Rudy Giuliani was mayor, it was a steady economic prosperity. Now Michael Bloomberg has come in, and the economy seems to be going back into the dumpers, raising the question of what he can do. We now join ourselves 10 months into the Bloomberg mayoralty, asking how is the mayor doing and how is the city doing. We are joined by four prominent civic commentators and critics to discuss the state of the city. Betsy Gotbaum is the city's public advocate, who is first in line to be mayor, at least until Mayor Bloomberg manages to cut her out of the line of succession. Charles Barron is a city councilman who represents East New York, which is a superb neighborhood, mainly because I grew up in it. He is a former Black Panther, former member of the Black Panther Party, who says he is still a Panther at heart. And he is, and most important for CUNY, he is the chairman of the Higher Education Committee of the City Council. Henry Stern spent 15 tumultuous years as the controversial and sometimes entertaining Parks Commissioner, who now is the director of a group called New York CIVIC, which is a group that he formed. Wayne Barrett is a veteran investigative reporter for the Village Voice, who basically complains about everything. We're going to start with Betsy Gotbaum. We are now 10 months into the Bloomberg administration. Give us a sense of how we're doing. You've had your battles with the mayor. You've had your successes with the mayor. How is he doing? How is the city doing?
Well, I think in general, the mayor's doing very well. I think that he sort of set his sights on certain things. He passed a budget, albeit it may come back to haunt him. He got control of the schools. He focused on doing that. He did it. He did it very, very well. He appointed a chancellor very quietly, and I think a lot of the chancellor. What I'm worried about is what's going to come now. I think that not only are the effects of 9/11 still upon us very seriously, but I think the economy is really bad. I think that we're going to have to do something. We can't cut that much more. We're not going to be able to cut. We're going to have to, unfortunately, get more revenue in. And I don't know how the mayor, who has said he doesn't want to raise taxes, is going to do without raising taxes. You can't. If you cut so much city services, the quality of life in New York City will go down to such an extent that it won't be livable. So I'm very nervous about what's coming, but on the whole, I would give the mayor very good marks right now.
Councilman Barron, the takeover of the city school system, which is something that mayors have been trying at least since Mayor Koch, maybe before that, is probably the signal achievement of Mayor Bloomberg's mayoralty. How significant is that? How's that going to change schools in East New York? How's that going to change? I mean, I have a first grader. Another one is going to be going into kindergarten next year. What should I expect from that?
Well, I think it was a big mistake to do that. I don't think any one person should be given that much power, especially when you don't even want to give us a plan. And how we give the mayor control of the schools when he wanted to cut the city council, had to stop him from cutting $300 million from the Board of Education. At the same time, he wants to take it over. He has no education background. He hired a chancellor that I think is another mistake, who had little or no education background. They had to waive his education credentials. We still have no plan. He keeps telling us that Dennis Walcott has it. Dennis tells us he has it. He tells us they're going to have it. We have
Dennis Walcott is the deputy mayor for education.
We have yet to see a plan on how do you improve the reading scores, how you improve the math scores, how you lower the class sizes, how you deal with discipline, have you more culturally relevant curriculum. And he hasn't even wanted to fight for the maintenance of effort. If the state gives up $7 billion, city gives up $5 billion, you have to maintain that effort if the state gives more. So I think that the schools are going to improve not because of the mayor and his chancellor, but in spite of them, because we have rock bottom and there's nowhere else to go but up. So he'll probably get credit for improvement that he has little or nothing to do with.
Mr. Stern, you were in government. You were a city councilman 25 years ago. You were in government under Mayor Koch. You were in government under Mayor Giuliani. You've seen the way the city relates to its economic situation. I mean, how desperate a situation are we in now, and how likely is it that the mayor can do some of the things he wants to do?
Well, I don't think that the difference between the say the Beam and Dinkins administrations, which were very unsatisfactory and ended in the defeat of one-term mayors. And the Koch and Giuliani administrations, which ran for 3 terms for Koch and 2 terms for Giuliani because he was not allowed to run for a 3rd term, I don't think the difference can be explained only in economic terms. Although you had the up elevator and the down elevator, I think it was the personality of the incumbents, the energy that they brought to the job, and their ability to connect with New Yorkers and to stand for something. So I think the weather, the economy is like the weather. You can always blame it, but you got to do something about it. If you can't change it, you got to have people roll with it. My own opinion is that Mayor Bloomberg has done a remarkably good job. His appointments are qualified people, not celebrities, but workmanlike, competent people. The board, terrific victory of the board. But the mayor used to control the schools. Until Mayor Lindsay, the mayor appointed every member of the Board of Education. It was to punish Lindsay at the time of decentralization, which of course, Wayne, you were very much involved in at that time as in East New York Browns in Ocean Hill, that in order to torment Lindsay, they took him out of the appointing process, and they had a 5-member Board of Education appointed 1 each by the 5 borough presidents. He was shut out. Gradually, after he went, they gave him 2 board members. Then they offered Koch 2 more in his when he was mayor, and he wouldn't take it because he still wouldn't have control. And now they finally broken that down. But we're just where we started 30 years ago.
Wayne, Henry talked about the kind of spirit of the mayors and of Mayor Koch and Mayor Giuliani.
That old stern nostalgia.
Well, I mean,
comes
there is a sense that some of the despite our problems post September 11th and economic problems, that there's a much better feeling in the city, and to some degree because the thumb of Mayor Giuliani has been lifted off.
Yeah, I don't miss him a bit. I don't miss him a bit, and frankly, I don't think the city does. And I think really the remarkable thing that Michael Bloomberg has done, almost effortlessly, really, is change the tenor of the city. It's amazing how much a mayor can change the mood of a city just by being a very different kind of personality. The tension is out of the air. Rudy managed to create tension needlessly. He seemed to thrive on it. And in the aftermath of 9/11, that's precisely the kind of personality we wouldn't need to guide the city into the future. And the personality that we are getting, I think, is a much more flexible personality. I think the good things that this mayor has done so far, not just in changing the mood of the city, but just, for example, nixing the New York Stock Exchange deal, a $1 billion giveaway. He seems to have a smart business mind about what will really work. That was the biggest boondoggle any mayor has ever done, the deal he did with the stock exchange. And I'm glad to see it go. I'm glad to see the stadium deals go that Mayor Giuliani. So he's reversed a lot of what I think were the boondoggles that he inherited from Rudy Giuliani, and I think he set a good tone. On the other hand, this budget is a disaster in the making. No other mayor, 16 days after the budget was passed, sent out a message to his commissioners to cut 7.5% of the budgets that were just approved. Now, either they couldn't add the numbers up or they were pulling the wool over the city council's eyes, because the council passes the budget, and the minute they pass the budget, he discovers $1 billion leak in it. Well, I think the mayor knew precisely when this budget was passed that it was an impossible budget. He immediately started talking about fare increases and other horrendous things. Now we understand a little bit why, because his buddy, George Pataki, just put commercials out in the suburbs saying to the suburbanites, don't vote for Carl McCall because Carl McCall is in favor of reinstating the commuter tax. You remember that the big issue that we went through the whole budget year was, well, why won't Michael Bloomberg advocate reinstating the commuter tax, which even Rudy Giuliani favored? And Rudy Giuliani condemned his Republican allies for repealing it. And Ed Koch certainly supported reinstating the commuter tax. And so Michael Bloomberg would never stand up like these other mayors have on behalf of the commuter tax, and now we see why, because George Pataki's going to use it to campaign against Carl
Nothing to do
McCall.
with the computer tax. The computer tax was killed by Speaker Sheldon Silver. He was the principal because historically the Republicans have been against it because they represent communities that pay it. The city has been for the commuter tax because they get the benefits of it. That's the way it's been for only 30 years. However, either to help in a Senate race in Rockland County,
right.
or to spite the mayor, with whom he was annoyed at the time, the Speaker used his influence, repealed the tax, cost the city $500 million every year. It can only go up. The largest self-defeating thing that's happened in the legislature in my memory. Just nutty. And however people posture about the computer tax, Bloomberg or Pataki or all of them, they have nothing to do with it. The Republicans aren't going to pass it. I assume it's dead.
Let me, Charles, let me turn to you. To what
Bob,
degree?
just let me say that
Yes.
the governor signed the repeal, and the Republican Senate passed it as well. I
I
certainly
think he's
agree
right,
Sure.
but I think his
with
point is
Henry
that it
that
wouldn't
Shelley
have happened.
Silver supported it too. That's certainly the case.
But it wouldn't have happened absent. I mean, Shelley Silver was the one who changed the position to make it happen. I
Yeah,
think that Henry was
Shelley
correct.
Silver
Everybody changed
is
their
supposed to be
position.
our
Nobody
guy.
was
Just
trying
one
They're
point
supposed
on
to be
that.
against it.
And I know everybody's giving Mayor Bloomberg a lot of credit, but if he would have joined the city council in a home rule message that say the mayor and the city council agree that the commuter tax should be given to the city, we would have had a stronger argument with the state. He refused to do that because Pataki was running.
But what's going to
And
happen
he played
now?
politics. Well, see, and then the budget that we passed, there was $1.2 billion in what they call risky revenue. That's the excuse he used to raise the 7%. Revenue like $230 million that's supposed to come from the feds, $147 million coming from airport taxation and overtime. All of that was in the budget, and that is still remained to see if that is going to be received. So what he did is just jump the gun and say, let me cut. And he sensitized the whole city. I know y'all giving him a lot of credit for changing the mood, and now City Hall is open and people could walk in. The policies are the same. Look at the budget. Regressive taxes. We were forced into a budget battle with him because he determines the revenue estimate. He said there's $42 billion to spend. If we do our own budget and factor in $42 billion, then he has the power to say, oops, did y'all do $42 billion? It's only $41 billion. We need to take that power away from him. The Congress determines the revenue estimate for the country. The state, the assembly determines it for the state, but yet in the city it's the executive branch.
But that's in.
But you
But
can't-
that is in.
but you
But
can't
that
do
is in
has
the
to be
charter.
changed.
That's in the
You
city
can-
charter.
And you can change the
can't-
charter.
No,
you can.
cannot
Sure you
change.
can.
The
Sure you
legislative
can.
body cannot change the
Not the
charter.
legislative body,
as
but
far
the
as
process-
it applies to the executive, the powers
But
of
the
different elected
process for
officials.
changing the charter is there.
Okay,
And with the
nobody's-
people and legislators, we need to do that.
Hey, but nobody's going to do it.
We'll
Let me
see.
tell you about the budget. The budget, of course, was a hoax. I wrote about that in April in my articles in May, that they're going to adopt a budget which cannot be implemented. So if you say it was, I agree with you, except that everyone knew it and everyone was in on it, including the leaders of the city council. What they wanted to show was that he could all agree, they weren't scrapping around, they were all good guys, and whatever happened down the road, they would work on together. Budget's like a roadmap. It's good for today, not for a year. And
Or is
I
it
mean-
good only? Is it good only until November 6th, the day after the election?
Election. That's the bottom
Yes.
line.
Yeah.
The problem, Henry, is that the charter gives the city council much greater power over the approval of a budget than it does over the approval of a modification of a budget. So when the council goes along with approving this budget in the first place, they have much greater power at that point. They have revenue powers. They can insist, no, we want some taxes in it. They can adopt their own budget with tax increases in it.
Yeah, but the only tax
Property
increase,
tax
that's
increases.
it.
I'm
No-
aware of that.
not if they
no
want
other
their
tax.
terms extended.
No other tax.
But they can adopt their own. They don't have that possibility
If we,
anymore.
I tell you what the problem we have with adopting our own budget, the same thing that Giuliani did. Once you adopt your own budget, then the spending is on the mayor. Then they punish agencies by not spending because they didn't adopt the budget that, the city council put forth. So we put a budget together that was we put $475 million back into the budget. 12.8 from CUNY. They wanted to cut CUNY by 12.8. We fought to get at least 10 million of it restored. We caught 26.8 for the Department of Aging, 300 million for the the Board of Education. Even $15 million was cut for summer programs. So when we restored the $475 million, and then the revenue side, he wanted to do regressive tax, we agreed with that, hoping that after the election in November that we can send a home rule package up to Albany where we get greater revenue. We're talking about a PIT surcharge, progressive income tax, stock transfer tax, the commuter tax. We didn't have to hurt the city the way it's hurting now had he agreed with us on that and forget about the re-election of his governor.
Yeah, you can get rid of any people with money who are now living in the city.
They're not going nowhere.
That's
That's the threat. We hear that threat every time.
They've been going for years.
And they never left.
The bottom line is this. If any one city in a democracy has, say, the highest taxes in the country and the highest welfare payments in the country, hypothetical, then two things will happen. The poor people will come and the rich people will leave.
Never
and
happens.
Then no one will be left to pay the taxes. Look
You
at
muttered that
Hartford,
was hypothetical.
Bridgeport.
Right.
It's completely
Yes, it
irrelevant
just
to what we're
doesn't
talking
happen.
about,
Yes,
Henry.
it just
But
That's not the
doesn't
case in either.
We held hostage by the corporations and the rich every budget year. We held hostage. They're going to leave. They're not going anywhere. We need to make them pay like the poor are paying right now. We got to pay fines, $55 up to $110 for parking tickets, cigarette tax, all regressive tax hurting the people. The corporations will stay. The rich will stay in New York. Tax them.
This era of good feeling doesn't really. This era of good feeling, doesn't seem to apply particular to you and to your office, Betsy. The mayor seems quite intent. He's not the first one to oppose the very existence of your office, and you were quite a good friend of his at one point, and he seems to be wanting to take you out of the line of succession and basically cut back whatever powers you do have under the charter. I mean, give some sense of what your relationship with the mayor is.
Well, at this point, and you're all talking about the budget, I think he took a lot of the budget out of my office's hide, so to speak. And that's one of the problems. But in terms of what is going on in terms of the charter and what the mayor wants to do to the Office of Public Advocate, yeah, he seems to want to get rid of it. And there is a ballot question that'll come up on November 5th, that basically takes the public advocate out of, the public advocate no longer will preside over the city council. And that means the next step a year from now is the public advocate is no longer in line for succession, and then next comes the elimination of the office. I don't say this is necessarily personal against me, although I have to think it must be because it's retroactive. So if it is passed on November 5th, November 6th, the public advocate no longer presides over the city council. If it weren't at me specifically, it might have been prospective towards the end of 2004. What do I think about that? Well, I think it's too bad because I think that I've only been in office 9 months and I'm having a terrific time doing a lot of things that I think this office should be doing, like helping people with their problems with government, and presiding over the city council is a very important aspect of the job because I get to introduce legislation.
But the mayor tried to do this in a very quick way. I mean, he formed the commission in late July, was it?
Yep.
And I mean, this was kind of was this a power grab? I mean, much the way as he's taken control of the Board of Education, was this a power grab? Was this an executive power grab?
I think the way it was done was extremely sneaky, and I think the way this ballot question is going to be on the ballot is going to be very sneaky. And yes, I do see it as a power grab. It gives the mayor much more power. He doesn't like the fact that the public advocate is looking over his shoulder. I think there'll be some others next year coming after the public advocate.
Because the question that raises is, we have this era of good feelings after Giuliani. Is the mayor basically an iron fist in a velvet glove? Charles, you've talked a lot about how you think that the policies are totally counter to this era of
exactly.
Are we talking about a velvet glove?
He is a kinder, gentler Giuliani. He just smiles. He welcomes everybody in. He's nice. But the minute you criticize him, when they said black and Latino parents, a Marist poll, supposed to be the most respected poll in the world, said that black and Latino parents, they don't want him to control the schools. He says they don't even know how bad a job the schools. I said that's insulting and racist. He had a fit. They tried to say we couldn't meet with commissioners. The same thing Giuliani did. And when Oliver Capel, Councilmember Oliver Capel, a white from the Bronx, came and supported me in that, It took him months before he would even speak to Oliver Capel again. So I don't think we should be fooled by the
speaking
kindness.
to him now?
Barely. I don't think they should be fooled by kindness and gentleness. This is about policies. He still was forcing our hand to balance the budget off the backs of the poor. He doesn't want to raise taxes on the rich. It is similar stuff, and if you look at the top echelon in his staff, it's predominantly white males giving him advice. And look at all of the selection of Klein, I think was not a good selection. I don't think that we've changed a whole lot, but the mood. The feeling is better. You can walk in City Hall. It's not tight anymore. That I'll give him credit
Well, can I
for.
give one point, though? I would disagree with you, Charles. Not that I never want to disagree with you, by the way.
Betsy, now we got to go back together on this thing. I support you still
I know.
convening over us, Betsy.
We can't cut deals on television.
Betsy,
No, I'm only
Betsy,
going to.
let me do this before
Wait,
you
no,
say
no.
No, all I can say is that the one area which I know that where things have changed in my office, because we have to call a lot of commissioners, and when the former public advocate was there, they could not get commissioners to return their call, which to me is very, very bad government. That public advocate could not call to solve a citizen's problem. Now I get through. My whole office gets through. We do get good responses. We find the commissioners very responsive. So I do have to jump in there and say that.
But we must be doing real terrible. That has to be a brownie point for somebody. Commissioner
Well, but
supposed to call you.
Right, but,
I mean,
but for
I'm just
8
saying it
years,
didn't.
but for 8 years, they didn't.
Golly.
Use the phrase a kinder, gentler Giuliani with the same policy.
Policy.
I think that's basically what people wanted. People wanted a kinder, gentler
What people
Giuliani.
are you talking about?
We
Not
got
the
it.
people in Eastern New York
All
and
the people that
Brownsville.
voted for him. He got a
Your people
majority
may
of the
have
vote.
wanted-
He was
not
running on
mine.
the, he
We
ran
wanted
on the
no
Republican
Giuliani, kinder
circuit,
or gentler.
And he won. And your own
Policies.
liberal Democratic candidate, ultra-liberal Mark
What? Y'all don't even know what that
Green, who's
means.
been preaching for 30 years, who owns Congress, a disciple of Ralph Nader, a campaign manager for Ramsey Clark in his day. He's paid his dues. Progressive movement was dumped like that. And he was dumped because the people who did it really wanted a Republican mayor so they could run against him 4 years
that's
from
quite
now.
a-
They
You
didn't
bet-
want a Democrat
Look,
that's
who'd be
why
in
you
office
think
for
that
8
Mark-
years.
that-
Give
Mark
me
Green lost.
$76 million. I'll become mayor too.
I
He bought
don't-
it.
I don't
Nobody
think
knew
so.
or heard of no Bloomberg.
I don't
and
think
most people
so.
don't know his policies. You know, we used to do mailings to get elected. He sent out videotapes to the whole city. You know, this is incredible.
Isn't that terrific? He got his name across, and he won.
And his
he won on the
his
Republican
mailings
one.
were colorful booklets. We had little postcards.
Yeah.
$76
Well,
million.
you know-
Real democracy.
Bob, you had kind of Exhibit A and Exhibit B of the punitive side of Mayor Bloomberg's personality on the show. So, you know, and I think in both cases they have some legitimate complaints. So, but on the other hand, I think the broader picture is one where we were used to, prior to September 11th at least, we were used to just a fusillade of attacks, whether it be street vendors, whether
Right.
it be cab drivers, whether it be, you know,
Press conferences.
yes, I mean, yeah, it was like the catalog of victims of the bile that came out of City Hall. It was just amazing, and it went on forever. And he was an extraordinarily angry public personality, and I certainly don't think that either Charles or Betsy would in any way think that there's some similarity between that and the personality we see from Michael Bloomberg. He has a much greater flexibility also about public policy.
He's less ideological.
Yes, he's far, you know, well, Rudy was really never ideological either. He kind of adopted that as a pose. But he adopted it, you know, after Newt Gingrich won in the '94 general election.
after
Remember,
he
he
got
supported,
burned
after he
on
supported
Mario
Mario Cuomo. He's a very flexible public figure prior to that. But he changed really in '95, and then he became a poisonous ideologue. But
Oh, that's a little extreme. I think I differ from the rest of them. I happen to like Mayor Koch, Mayor Giuliani, and Mayor Bloomberg. I think they've all made unique contributions to the city, and now it's Bloomberg's time. I mean, he couldn't have won without the money, but that's because nobody ever heard of him. On the other hand, a week or two, 10 days before the election, he was 15 points behind. He won because Mayor Giuliani endorsed him, and people had enormous faith in the mayor. The trouble with it's not, I mean, you're convinced of it, maybe the people in your community are convinced of it, but most people aren't. There are a lot of other neighborhoods in New York City where people feel quite differently. And those are the neighborhoods that elected Mayor Bloomberg. Staten Island, for example, carried 3 or 4 to 1.
Yes.
Well, they're entitled to vote, too.
Nobody
You
said
know,
they're
one
not.
person, one vote.
The bottom
so they
line,
count.
it's
you
not.
can't ignore
But
them.
even those same neighborhoods, when you look at the budget and how it's hurting all of these agencies, look what he wanted to do to children's services. Look what he wanted to do to the homeless, to the seniors, all to save his rich buddies from adding any more into the economy. It doesn't have to be like the stock transfer tax would have solved this thing without any budget. We could have gotten $2 to $6 billion for stock transfer tax. 50 cents.
Yeah, you
But
lose the stock exchange.
No.
Ridiculous.
Well, please,
Everything
that
is
never
done by
happens.
teletype, by automatic
Let me just-
transmission.
let me
You
redirect-
think any
Never
market
happens.
will
Let
stay
me
in a city which charges 50
Yes.
cents a share
New
for
York
transfer?
City,
When as soon as
yes.
they press a
I'm going to try
button,
to seize
they can
back
have
control
the,
of my show for a second.
things done in New Jersey.
Not doing a
Ridiculous.
very good job of it. You talk about $76 million. My 9th grade social studies teacher at George Gershwin Junior High School on Linden Boulevard
Yay,
always
Gershwin.
taught us that rich or poor, it's good to have money. So
I'm all right with that.
And he earned it, too.
give
the
us
the other immense factor that's going on in this city right now is that we remain in recovery as a city from the aftermath of September 11th, 2001. I mean, I think that the city took a body blow that's unlike any body blow any other city has taken, certainly in this country.
Yes.
And it's almost, I think that we still bear the effects in terms of that the tone, we're talking about the tone, that's very important in terms of keeping this city moving ahead, because it's very hard to knock New York to its knees. I think New York got up, but I think we were knocked to our knees, and it's the first time I can honestly say that. I mean, do we still bear some of that,
Yes.
some of that angst?
Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
it was an
I mean,
overwhelming
people are
tragedy.
absolutely still afraid. I think every time the federal government issues an orange alert, people don't know what to do. They feel sort of attacked and not without any ability to say what we're supposed to do about the orange alert or the red alert. I can't keep them track.
Does that get reflected in government and how the city government puts adopts a budget, reacts to what people need?
No effect on the budget.
No, I think that I thought you were talking more about the
Well, there's an
the
effect on the
mood.
economy. The degree that there's an effect on the
but
budget.
there's no money. The problem with the budget is that there's no money. It doesn't matter what you put in the budget or what figures you adopt. If the revenues don't come in,
Right.
you won't be able to support it. It's real money.
So we have to increase the revenues, and the
Increase the
question is,
revenue, right.
how are we going to do that? And I think we need to fight for the commuter tax. I don't agree, Henry, that that's a done deal and it's not going to happen.
Well, I'm for the commuter tax.
No, I know
hope
you
we
are.
get it through.
Goodness
yeah,
gracious,
sure.
I don't think you
What do you
would
think?
never
I mean,
be.
do we still bear the brunt of September 11th? Are we still recovering?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think people are still in aftershock from that. It was a horrible, tragic experience. But we got to realize before September 11th, on September 9th, there was a $2.8 billion budget deficit that Giuliani left us with, the great Giuliani. And he also left us with a lot of tension in communities. So we had to come behind Giuliani, who had these years of prosperity and didn't do the things that he needed to do so that in the outer years, the years that we're in now, we wouldn't be in this mess here. So after he left, the $2.8 billion went up to $5 billion after the tragedy. And then everybody is still, I think, very shook, and it should be, by what happened on
I
September
think
11th.
that the way the Mayor Bloomberg has dealt with Ground Zero, trying to figure out a plan for Ground Zero, has been far better than the way the governor has, or certainly the way the ex-mayor has. I think the way he's been far more flexible about what should go there, and the governor adapting the Giuliani position of no development whatsoever on the footprints of the old Twin Towers. I think that's an inflexible position. I don't think you adopt that before you get into the planning process. I don't think you send the planners in with that mission. To me, the most important thing to do is to make that Ground Zero the centerpiece again of the Wall Street economy, and to drive the economic development in that section of town is crucial to the whole rest of the city. And I think that the mayor's been far more flexible about what should go there than any of the other players.
I think you're right on what he's trying to do. But interesting, this is the first tragedy to occur in the age of victimology, where the unfortunate survivors and victims are major players in deciding what's going to be done. It didn't happen in Dresden or Hiroshima or any of the other places which suffered enormously. But the times have changed.
One quick thing, Bob. The thing that's being left out on Ground Zero, Fitterman Hall, BMCC, totally destroyed. We don't hear no talk about that.
BMC has moved up to half of BMC is at City College now.
The fact that people in the outer boroughs were affected because other people worked there, totally ignored, and that black and Latino contractors of color should be a part of that formula for rebuilding. Another thing left out.
Let me go to questions from the audience. Please identify yourself and the school you're from.
Tarika Watson, BMCC. Okay, this question is geared towards the economy. A lot of businesses are being compromised to put housing in illegal conversions. I want to know, what is the mayor doing to maintain commercial and industrial zones and keeping not only huge corporations in, but small businesses which employ if not most, a good amount of New York City residents.
And small businesses also are the anchors of neighborhood shopping strips, et cetera, et cetera. We'll take a look at who wants to kind of tackle that.
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing at the City Council, the reason why we didn't raise property tax, the reason why nobody ever wants to raise any taxes on corporations is to keep the businesses here. But now that they are here, they have to make a greater commitment to really redeveloping and building our communities and hiring our people in our communities. So I think that a lot has been done with this particular budget. No one wanted to raise the tax, so that didn't happen. So there's no reason for businesses to want to flee. Now that we didn't raise the taxes on corporations, let's see how much they invest. And we're having struggles around living wage. How much will they want to give up to wages? That's another battle. And they say if we do a living wage, businesses are going to leave. So it seems like we have to do things to, yes, keep businesses here, but also to make them accountable to the community that's trying to keep them here so they can make their profits, but they have to share some of that with the workers in the living wage.
Well, Alan Hevesy did some audits during the Giuliani years that showed that the city had disproportionately granted tax incentives and other benefits to large corporations in keeping with the question. And I think it was a very serious critique of the Giuliani economic development policies that the Hevesy audit showed. I haven't seen any assessment since Mayor Bloomberg came into office as to whether or not he's changing those policies, whether or not he's altering that.
I think there are alterations. First of all, there's a new deputy mayor in charge, Dan Doctoroff. Then the head of the EDC was replaced by a person who'd come from
I know they have new
professional
people,
experience. They have new people, and the reports that I get are that they're quite professional. They move quickly on matters, and they have a do-the-job mentality.
Well, I already indicated I thought that the fact that they nixed the deal for the stock exchange was terrific, but at the same time, in direct answer to the question, I don't know if they're steering any more of these benefits to smaller businesses.
And smaller businesses,
that's where the employees are. That's where the
smaller
workers
business
are.
is also a fairly broad category. It's not only mom and pop shops, but it's small manufacturers, small warehouse
And there hasn't been any policy changes.
Well, the policies. The question is, what is the policy? And I'm not aware of what the policy is, if it's new or what it is.
I mean, there's even issues of superstores coming in. You've had some come into your district by City Line, where which undercut some of the mom and pop stores that are the anchors of shopping strips in the city.
I'm for them. I'm for large stores.
You're for large
I think
stores.
they provide consumer choice. They provide lower prices. They provide employment opportunities. And
cash register jobs. We want ownership.
Well, one of the questions is, I teach up at Columbia also, and I take my journalism students on a tour of Brooklyn every year, and I go to a man named Joe Long, who runs Burdell's Records on Nostrand Avenue and Fulton Street, who used to be the chairman of Community Board 3, who makes the point that when you shop in a small store, that dollar circulates in the neighborhood
Right.
2 times or 3 times, and
That's the
and when
difference.
you spend that dollar in the superstore, it leaves. So I mean, that's the argument of small
Exactly.
business recycling that money
Right.
that you don't get with the
Exactly.
superstore, and that helps to kind of undercut the economic base.
We
of
have to
this.
build a community economy, and you don't build a community economy bringing in Caldors, Home
Well, except that it
Depot,
is true that when people
Rite Aid
don't have a
Pharmacy.
lot of money, these stores do have
Yes.
lower prices.
Yes, they do.
And you
but
can
if you bring
return
in
stuff if you don't
Rite
like
Aid
it.
Pharmacy all the time, and not a right-on pharmacy that we own, then we will never circulate money in our community.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Well, in listening to Mr. Barron, I see that, as you mentioned, you have remained true to your Black Panther roots, and I just want to point out to the panel is that the wealthiest, top % of the population contribute the majority of the tax revenue that your community enjoys, and your community, like you mentioned, I think it was East New York that you were representing,
Yes.
contributes a minor or minuscule portion of that tax revenue, yet enjoys the majority of the government benefits afforded by those dollars. And I think the point that should be made is that let's not be in such a hurry to raise taxes and tax the very wealthy that don't make up your constituency and are not going to be voting for you. And let's look at other ways to, like Mayor Bloomberg has been doing, to cut costs, to do away with inefficiency. And, if we need to raise tax revenue, let that be the last step and not the first step. What is your response to that?
That's a very good question, except just you need to know that my community doesn't pay a minuscule part of the taxes. You're wrong. That if you look at the tax levy on communities across the country, we are 65% of New York City, people of color. We pay more than our share of taxes. And all I'm saying is that we need to have a progressive income tax. The more you make, the more you should pay. There are corporations that paid 0 tax. I paid more tax than some corporations in this city, and I'm saying they should pay their fair share of taxes. No, it's not welfare that's messing up the economy. It's not low-wage people that are messing up the economy. That is a myth that came from conservative politics. The people who are messing up the economy is the small percentage that controls most of the wealth in this city and in this nation, and it has to be more equitably distributed.
I really believe that in the aftermath of the worst attack on America and on this city ever, that if the city council and the mayor had agreed to adopt a surcharge on the wealthiest New Yorkers, a surcharge that would sunset, that would end
Exactly, that's what we
in
said.
2 or 3 years when the city was back on its feet, that there would be, and it would amount to a minuscule percent
Exactly.
of those taxpayers' earnings. I really believe that most of the wealthy people, the Independent Budget Commission, did an examination of the surcharge that would gain an additional $1 billion in revenue by just taxing people who made over $1 million a year, a minuscule amount. In light of what happened on 9/11, I think many of those people would be quite willing to do that.
I
and
think there will
support
be,
the
if
city.
I may say, look into next year, Wayne, I think there will be higher taxes next year of various kinds. There's already a higher tax, which is, you say, affects the poor. The parking charges have gone up from about $50 to $100.
That's for poor people, though. I'm talking about rich people.
I'm just
not
making the
poor
point
folks.
that taxes and fees are
That was
going
a
up.
fee. That wasn't even a tax.
Right.
We
But you
can't
still
afford
have
to pay that.
You still have to pay. Then don't park illegally.
But for the mayor, that for the mayor that rejected,
It's too poor to have a car.
What I'm saying is they're only
the
going to
mayor that
get
rejected these kinds of taxes and then to immediately
He'll
start talking about a fare increase. You talk about a tax
Right.
that punishes poor and working
people,
people.
all the time.
A fare increase.
I predict that there will be a package involving higher taxes, higher fares, some service reductions. It'll have to be, I think it'll be something in the end that the mayor and the city council are likely to agree on, because if they don't agree, they don't get any of it. They can't, in other words, if
So none of
we're
this
in a
will
posi-
happen
none of this
until
will-
after Election Day.
Of course.
That's
Well,
the
it's
same.
premature.
Let me go to
It's only-
let me go to the next question. I want to try to get
Right.
several questions in.
Hi, my name is Celine Thomas, and I'm part of the College of Staten Island. Now, I'd like to talk about higher education. Keeping in mind that New York is the 14th state out of the entire country to pay for that has the highest cost for public education, and that it is the state out of the entire country that puts out the least amount of money for its public schools. Okay,
It's
and
the
in
state
1990
you say New York is the state out of all 50 states that spends the
puts
least on
out the least money for
public schools.
education. Yes.
Your teacher told you that?
No, I'm
spend-
part
let
of
her
a
ask the
New York
question.
public research group.
Oh, NIPER.
Yes.
Please ask the question.
Yeah, and in 1995,
flat.
there was a $750 tuition hike, and 3,900 students dropped out of school. And knowing that students that graduate from college make 80% more money than students that have a high school diploma, which eventually is like a complete, is a lot of money lost from the revenue in the future. Now there's talk of another tuition raise, another $750 tuition hike. What is Mayor Bloomberg going to do about that? Does he want more students to drop out of school?
I haven't talked to him, nor has he asked my opinion. But I think that it's what Wayne was talking about. I think it's what Charles and I were talking about, and I think Henry too, that we are going to have some tax increases. And I think we have to look at a personal income tax over people making a certain amount of money. I think we do have to look at the property tax, Charles. I don't think it's been raised in a long time. And I think that there are some people in single-family homes who might be getting away with a little bit more than they should. But we're going to have to raise the revenues, and that's going to be hopefully something that'll keep down those tuition increases.
We have a tax proposal which the council made, which will raise $100 and $200 million a year, which is totally fair in my judgment. It's called the absentee landlord tax. Under current law, no, we're for it. We agree on this.
The mayor rejected that. We
Well,
had that in our
want
package.
because he didn't want to do any taxes this year. Wait till November.
The nice mayor.
You'll get the
Nice
tax.
mayor.
You'll
Well, I
get
think,
the tax.
you
You
know,
might even get it retroactively.
But
get
she's
the tax.
absolutely correct that the tuitions in community colleges, I think we have the highest tuition rate of any community college system in the United States. And the tuition levels are extortionate, really, when you get to poor families trying to send a kid off to college, and to have tuition increases contemplated at community colleges or senior colleges in this system is really unacceptable.
Tuition in medical school is pretty low.
When I went
I've got a kid there.
when I went to Brooklyn College from 1966 to 1970, we had no tuition, and we had a student fee of $30 a semester.
That's what I was.
And when they raised it, this is the 1960s, when they raised it to $50, we shut the school down.
Right.
I'm not encouraging it. Just a little bit of history.
When I went to City College in the 1950s, and I'm a CUNY graduate as well as you, fees were even less, and we denounced them when they want to go from $3.50 to $5.
And I went to Hunter, and
You
it was
did?
free. But when the complexion of the college changed, now we got tuition. They don't want to do remediation on the four-year college. Nobody wants to talk about race because it's a naughty thing. But when the complexion of CUNY changed, then tuition came. The B average with the high school diploma is not enough. You have to have a 1059 in the SAT scores. We have to have standards. And when I say that you can't use standards to usher in racism, there's the post said, "Oh, I'm a terrible person. I want to." You don't have to sacrifice access to gain excellence. We can have them both.
I don't think having to know how to read is racism.
It's not having to know how to read. We know how to read. But I think when it was a free tuition and it was all white, it was a free academy, it was all white, no tuition, a high school diploma with a B average, and guess what? Remediation in every school when it was all white. When it turned people of color, we got to have standards. We got to impose tuition. We got to have SAT scores. With all of this nonsense. Oh, I'm getting upset.
Oh, we don't want that, Charles.
Calm yourself.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Green from Brooklyn College.
Very
and
good. It's about time we get somebody from Brooklyn College.
Of course. I have a question. It pertains to those recent strikes for the bus workers in Queens.
From the private bus workers, right?
Yes, the private bus workers. So the issue of transportation continues to concern many New Yorkers. And I would like to know, what programs do you think should be implemented to ensure an improved transportation system that also compensates workers properly?
You know, part of what was going on is there was, as the strike continued of the private bus workers, you had the most kind of sustained discussion of possibly having the city take over those franchises that we've seen in a long time. It did not happen, but I mean, you've looked at these issues for 75 years.
Almost. You know, the private bus lines have been,
away.
you know, they have been some of the bulwarks of the worst politicians in town forever. They have been major contributors to political figures. Now, obviously, this doesn't affect Mayor Bloomberg. They were enormous contributors to Rudy Giuliani, and Rudy Giuliani never did anything
And
to
Mayor
deal
Beam
with the
and, Mayor, and all
right.
the mayors, but all the mayors
Right,
before them.
and other citywide officials, and certainly they've been very plugged in at the city council, always been defended at the transportation committee and so forth. So they have mined the political field, and they have managed to be protected for many, many years. Though they deliver bad services, they get enormous subsidies, just enormous subsidies for the city, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right, and they pay themselves huge salaries.
Yes, and they pay themselves huge salaries, and so that, you know.
Should the city be taking over that system?
I think the whole thing needs
Yes.
to be very, very carefully assessed. This may be one of those instances when you want to do the reverse of privatization, but at least they should be competitively bid, these franchises,
Right.
which they have never been. And in fact, all of these franchises are really a political commodity that's bought and sold on the auction table of political contributions. And that's the way they have been forever. So it affects service, and this does not mean that the workers themselves should pay the price for that, but it's a very complex situation that maybe this mayor, who was elected without any of their money, will be able to independently assess.
But you also saw a strike. I mean, in the Transport Workers Union, you have a new union president who's very aggressive in kind of trying to reestablish the power. I mean, you know, traditionally going back to Mike Quill when we were all, you know, younger, it was almost an old communist union. There was an old communist union, and you had a very aggressive. Well, just the leadership, but so I mean, do you see a kind of is this an example of a reawakening of labor? On the one hand, you see 1199 endorsing the governor and kind of playing more kind of a traditional form of politics, but yet at the same time you seem to see labor reawakening.
Yes, I
in
think
terms
this
of
is,
being
yeah,
assertive.
and they are in the middle. They
things.
just started the negotiations of transport workers
Exactly.
with the MTA for the big contract.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's a very awake union that's going to be a very serious player. And I don't mean with everything I said about the franchises to suggest, as I said at the end, that in any way means that the demands of the workers
No, but
were in
one of
some
the
way
key things,
inappropriate.
one of the key things in trying to keep the city afloat is going to be the labor contracts with 260,000 employees for the city.
See, I think the person you were alluding to is Roger Toussaint,
Yes.
who's doing an excellent job with the Transit Workers Union. And I think all workers should be protected, whether it's a private sector or public
Let me
sector. There
explain.
should be some kind of...
His
Let me
rival is
Let him-
Sonny Hall.
let
I'm
him-
just asking you.
Let him finish.
No,
The
Sonny's head of
Transit Workers
International.
Union,
Yes.
he's trying to keep the fares down so they don't raise the fares and make the people pay again. He's also protecting many of his workers so that they don't cut services. You know, they're trying to close down token booths in communities across this city so that you wouldn't have a person there that could help you if you were sick or help you with directions, and it creates more unemployment. So Roger is doing an excellent job, and those issues...
Is this a broader labor assertion? Because at the same time you see other unions, you see a whole series of unions endorsing Governor Pataki, unions that are, unite. I mean, one of the kind of progressive bellwethers of the city, endorsing a Republican for mayor.
One of the advantages
a Republican for governor.
One of the advantages of an incumbent, you can give out a lot of money, during the election. So you have the incumbency. A friend that was not a friend of yours years ago when he wasn't running becomes a friend now during the election year and starts doling out big bucks. I mean, so I think he's in an advantaged position as an incumbent, and he's going to pay off as many unions as he can and give deals. And unfortunately, the union leader is in a position where they have to deliver for their union members. And if they get that from Pataki, I'm just hoping the rank and file doesn't follow the leadership on that.
But the union leaders are making a judgment that that's where their interest lies. That their interest lies with Governor
powerful
Pataki.
incumbent.
They do not belong. What they're deciding is they do not belong in the pockets of the Democratic Party, which has always taken them for granted, if they can get a better deal for the Republican. It's totally self-interest.
But that's also, I mean, it's also, you also see it in the way that Governor Pataki is reaching into communities of color,
course he
trying
is.
to break the kind of Democratic stranglehold, especially with Latinos.
What do you think?
Bob, in many ways, none of this is
African
new. In
Americans.
many ways, none of this is new. All of these unions have traditionally supported Republican state senators throughout the state. The Republican state senators.
This is the governor.
They have
That's very,
supported
very
wherever
different.
the power is.
But that's very different.
Well, I don't think it's very different if you support Frank Padovan and other senators. All the other Republican state senators from the city, 1199, supported them last time. They refused to allow any workers for the union to support any of the Democratic candidates challenging those Republican incumbents.
There are basically, let me explain. The students, I feel,
Quickly, please.
pedagogic.
Right.
There are basically two parties in politics. They're not the Republicans and the Democrats. They're the ins and the outs. And existing institutions and organizations tend to support the ins. Then, if the ins get thrown out, they'll support the outs. They'll support the new ins. That's
Let me go to another
nature of
question,
things.
please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Wendy Morris. I'm from CUNY CWE. And my question is about education. We know that the mayor just dissolved the Board of Education, and I'd like to know what steps is he going to take to ensure a smooth transition of the Board of Education, how long it will take to implement an efficient, fair, adequate educational system for all children, and will they bring music and art and other cultural activities back to the communities?
Well, I think it's a very good question, but I think it's a very difficult question to answer. I think you saw yesterday that the new Board of Education had a meeting, or was it today?
The panel on education.
The new panel on
priorities.
education that has replaced the old Board of Education. And my understanding is that there was very little rancor, very little pontificating, that it was a rather quiet, calm, somewhat boring meeting, but very efficient. And the comparison in several newspapers was made to the old Board of Ed, which was cantankerous and constantly yelling at the chancellor. I see that as positive from the point of view that at least give the chancellor a chance to get his program in place and to show us what his program is. I agree with Charles. We need to know what that program is. We need to hear what they're going to be doing. I think if they are talking about literacy as their focus, that they really want everybody to be able to read, we don't really know how that's going to happen. We need to know about that. We need to know how this new educational panel is going to push forward that program and how they're going to do it. We don't know that yet. I think it may be a little bit early, but I think those are the kinds of things we need to be watching. How are they going to implement whatever their vision is?
Very, very quickly, because I want to try to get another couple of questions.
It was good that the Board of Education was abolished because they were a negative influence on the chancellor. They made things worse than they are, and they had all kinds of private deals for themselves and their families and all the rest of it.
I'll tell you, I mean, your question, I have a daughter who's in kindergarten in District 3, and we have to, and the parents have to raise money for things that ought to be basic, basically provided by the school system. Yes.
Hi, my name is Lili Ukalani Berman from Hunter College, and my question is about the gubernatorial race and which of the candidates you feel would be most friendly or best support the Hunter College or the CUNY system in general, or the city.
Which of the gubernatorial candidates?
Yes.
I think Carl McCall has definitely shown historically that he would be the best person, the best friend of CUNY. I think Pataki, with some of the appointments that's going on here, I think has hurt the CUNY system. And I just think that we need to make some changes. I think Carl McCall is the greatest friend that CUNY has as in the gubernatorial race.
Does anybody want to take the governor's side here on that?
No, let's go. Next question.
Quick.
Go ahead.
Question. This is, good evening, my name is Brandon Boland, I'm from City College. This is to Mr. Barron. A minute ago you drew the analogy with the access and the excellence to CUNY schools. I just wanted to point out really quick that this year at City College we have increased enrollment, so that's increased access, and we also have increased excellence, so it doesn't seem like they're mutually exclusive. Once we nixed the standards, the remedial standards, we had increased enrollment and we have increased excellence. The students that are not able to pass the standards, they can go to community college for 2 years, the Borough Manhattan Community Colleges, which just so happens to be at City College, and then once they are up to passing the remedial standards, they can then enter into City College. So I just wanted to see what your take on that was.
My response to that is that there is a study out, and it'll be concluded in December, my Committee on Higher Education, we're going to have hearings to see if what you're saying is accurate. We want to see what the impact of these standards have had on CUNY. It may have one impact at one college and another at another college. So the line is still out. So whether or not that has happened across CUNY, and we'll find out in December if all of that what you're saying is accurate, because some places it has gone down.
Bob, we're down to 3 minutes. Can we?
Sure, go ahead.
45 seconds. Yeah, I think that.
I'll worry about the time.
Okay, I'm worried because there are 4 of us. I think Councilman Barron is an excellent and witty exemplar of a radical populist point of view, and they reflect opinion in his district. I don't think it's
in the world, not
citywide.
just my district.
Well, yeah, maybe the
world.
third world. But we're part of the first world.
New York is its own world. New York is its
that's
own
true.
world.
We're a world of our own, a very diverse world. That was not going to be. The problem is, and I think we've caught these two people who made these two guys moderate, and I'm just an old-fashioned Tory in this crowd because I like Giuliani and respect for Bloomberg. So different. But you kids have to understand something. You cannot have increased services and do more and all the rest of it unless you can pay for it. Because under the law, you have to balance. And you cannot balance the budget by simply increasing taxes on the rich. Because the rich have a lot of mobility, and they can and will leave. The number of 500 top corporations in New York City has gone from 140 to 56 over the years. There's no reason 56 can't go with the growth of electronics and email and stuff like that. You don't have to be anywhere to do anything. You don't have to pay cigarette taxes in New York. You buy them on email.
We only have a couple of minutes left.
Okay,
let me take that back. Let me work off that comment to the point I made in the beginning, which is we're looking at Mayor Bloomberg and even Governor Pataki. To what degree are any policies, any attempts to change government, any attempts to achieve results on the street, the victim of larger economic forces? When Wall Street sneezes, New York City's budget gets.
But Bob, I think the answer. Let me just answer that a little bit because
every study has said people leave New York City when their children cannot be educated. They leave New York City when the air is no longer healthy. They leave New York City when they don't have decent places to live. Not when you take a little more from the rich. That's not what drives people away. They want their children educated. Sorry.
Well, also, I'd like to say, I'm citywide, and I see that we've got to strike a fair balance between Charles's community, which is a wonderful community of working class and people who pay their taxes and who go to school. I mean, we need to strike a balance between them and between the wealthy people, and I think we can't take it out of the backs of Charles's community any more than we can out of the middle class community.
Right,
be very fair about that.
I have to cut us off, I think, and I'm about to get this magic sign that says goodbye. And
wave to Wayne.
I want to thank everybody for being here. I think that what we see in this debate, it's a debate that's going to be going on for the full 4 years of the Bloomberg term, or if he leaves office from the Gotbaum mayoralty. And
30 days or 60?
And
60, okay.
I think these are questions that we're going to be revisiting, and I think that it's important to remember that what happens at City Hall, what happens in the State House, what happens in Washington affects all of our lives, and sort of things beyond our control. So we will be revisiting these questions as we move on. Thank you very much.